Hi,
Hello,
how are
how
you?
you doing?
Good, Baruch Hashem, how are you?
Good.
Excellent. Yeah, I like your new website.
Yeah,
Very
yeah,
nice. Very
yeah.
nice.
I didn't do this one. This one I hired somebody to do for me.
Yeah, but it's good. It's cute. I like it. Very friendly.
Good.
Yeah, yeah. Sorry, yeah, I'm looking forward to your share, but I only focus on one thing at a time, so my multitasking is wearing thin sometimes. I
Well,
gotta get,
just just
I gotta
so
get.
the first part of your message it said in 20 minutes, and I said, okay, just advertising for my share. That's good.
Sorry about that. It's been so busy around here. We had 200 people for the new member lunch.
That's great.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
I saw the list. Very
There goes
impressive.
my
Very
phone.
nice.
I'll be back with you in a minute. I'm back. Anyway,
Okay.
it was a very lovely lunch. We had a grand time.
That was this past Shabbos. Okay,
This
good.
past Shabbos, yeah. Yeah, it was really, we've got quite a few members the last year and a half. It's nice. I just hope some of them stay. St. Louis is the medical and law transit city. We just hope they stay.
Some will. Some will. Some will.
Yeah, hopefully, yeah. Then I have a kollel dinner this Friday night. It doesn't end. Busy, busy, busy.
Hello, everybody.
What?
I'm just welcoming everybody.
Okay. But I always have time for your share. Almost.
Okay, another 2 minutes. Welcome, everybody. If you can turn on your cameras, that is helpful to me. I'm going to spotlight my video and go to View on the top right-hand corner and change to Gallery. Um,
Hi, Rabbi Shulman with a lovely background.
thank you very much. How are you?
Baruch Hashem Yom Yom.
Greetings to you. I hope you are enjoying life in Israel.
Thank God. Thank God. Just still setting up the house and stuff. Still trying to navigate, but looking for a job, that kind of those kinds of little things.
Are you living in an American colony?
And more or less, I'm living in Ramat Shemesh.
Okay.
So that's about that's about an American colony as you can find. But
Brits?
it's okay. There
Do
are
you,
enough Israelis here to keep reminding us that we live in Israel.
do you have any Brits in the neighborhood?
Do I have any what?
Any Brits? Britons?
Brits as in British?
Yes,
Yeah, a few for sure.
good. I hope they should appreciate you because you're very, very
Thank you.
excellent.
Yeah, I haven't yet started on the teaching the local scene, so we'll see how that progresses. All right, 8 o'clock. We are on at the time to start. So welcome everybody. A couple of housekeeping items. If you can keep your cameras on, it is helpful to me. As I share my screen, I put you on my second monitor and I continue to see your cameras. So that is not a candid camera, that is a real camera. And that is helpful to me. Number one. Number two, for now, I'm going to put everything on mute, but I leave the option to unmute so you can join us in the conversation. And hopefully we'll have time for questions at the end and just schmoozing, but we're going to jump right in. I put into the, actually, let me put that into the chat again. Into the chat, you should, in a moment, copy link and paste. That is the source page for today. It's also on the Torah in Motion website. So we're going to jump to that source page momentarily. If somebody would just keep an eye on the chat, and as people log in, then you can just copy. If somebody asks for the source page, just copy and paste it, because I tend not to notice the chat while teaching. Okay. Let's jump right in. I'm going to share my screen. Hopefully this will work.
I don't know how to fix it. My name is Danto, and it comes always not Dano, and I don't know how to fix it.
Well, two things. Number one, I know who you are, so that's okay. Number two, number two, a
Yeah, I don't
temporary
know.
fix. Temporary fix. If you put your mouse over over your screen, over your video screen,
Yeah.
and you right click, use the right click button. One of the options that pops up is to rename. And you can correct it, but that'll fix it for today. To fix it long term, you have to go into your Zoom
No,
account.
it doesn't
But okay,
do it.
no worries.
Okay.
We know who you are. Okay, let's jump in. Share screen, and you should all see this screen at the beginning of Perek Yud Chet. Is that clear? All right. And again, in the chat, if is the source page for today, which we'll get to momentarily. We are starting Perek Yud Chet. Perek Yud Chet, in many ways, is the if there was a
I'd like to,
turning point.
I'd just like to ask you a question about
Yeah.
your use of the word perek. I've
Hmm.
been told by somebody I respect that since the divisions were made by Christians, we shouldn't use the word perek, but say something like kapitel.
I don't know. The Rishonim use the word parak all the time. It is true that parak division was originally created by Christian printers for the Christian Bible, but already in the time of the Rishonim, they referred to chapter and verse, parak and pasuk, in that regard. There's a discussion in the halacha as to why that was so, partially because of the constant need to debate and disputations and various debates with Christian authorities. And so we kept the Perek division. Sometimes it's logical, and sometimes it's not. But the reality is it's printed in our Tanakh. Its original source may not have been of Jewish origin, but that doesn't change the fact that every Tanakh is printed with divided into prakim. It's a fact. There's also a Masoret of Parshiot that we have that's also printed in some Tanachs. But kapitel is a Yiddish word, so I'm not sure why a Yiddish word is better than a word that was used for 1,000 years by the Rishonim. So I'm not sure I agree with that assessment. Okay. Be that as it may, Perek Yud Chet, Kapitel Yud Chet, however you want, chapter 18, however you want to define it, is where we're up to. And in many ways, this is a turning point in the second half of Sefer Yehoshua. Really I would divide Yehoshua into two parts, probably 3 if you include the last couple of chapters as a kind of postscript. There's the conquest and there's the division. We looked at the conquest that climaxes and finishes in chapter 12. We're in we're studying now the second half of Yehoshua, the division of the land and the settlement of each tribe in their land. That started in chapter 13. We've spent a couple of weeks looking at the first couple of tribes. We've seen essentially 5 tribes already: Reuven, Gad, and part of Manasseh on the east side of the Jordan, Yehuda, and then Ephraim and the remaining part of Manasseh on the west side of the Jordan. That leaves 7 tribes for the remaining part of the land of Israel. And chapter 18 is a turning point. We'll see why it's a turning point for many reasons, but we're gonna look at this starting today. Vayikahalu koladat b'nei Yisrael Shiloh. The entire congregation of Israel gathers in Shiloh. Vayashkinu sham et Or Moed, and there they placed the Mishkan, the Yashkinu sham, they placed the Mishkan, the Or Moed, the tent of meeting. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that today because it's a subject of a shir we have to come back to next week in depth, and that is the moving of the Mishkan from Gilgal to Shiloh and the moving of base camp, the breakdown of the camp at Gilgal where they have been for the last 14 years since they entered into the land of Israel. Now Yehoshua moves that Mishkan and he moves the camp, the central headquarters of the camp of Israel, from Gilgal to Shiloh. If you want a quick look at the map, I like this picture for this chapter. Gilgal was down here by the opposite Yerushalayim near Yericho. Now he moves it to Shiloh, which is geographically in the middle of the region of Ephraim. That too we'll talk about next week. But just park that we've moved from Gilgal to Shiloh, and we'll come back to the story of Shiloh. This is needs a subject to an analysis to itself. Nonetheless, the land was conquered before them, or remains to be conquered before them. Vayivatru b'bnei Yisrael asher lo chalaku et nachalatam. There still remained amongst the children of Israel that had not yet divided and received their inheritance, Shiv'ah Shvatim, 7 tribes. And as I said before, we've seen 5 so far, and remaining 7, which are Binyamin, Shimon, Yisachar, Zvulun, Asher, Dan, and Naphtali, remain to be divided and apportioned in the land. Vayomer Yehoshua el b'nei Yisrael. Yehoshua then says to Israel, and remember now we're in Shiloh, right? We're no longer in Gilgal, we're in Shiloh. Ad ana atem mitrapim lavo l'reshet ha'aretz. How long are you going to procrastinate? Are you going to remain lazy? Are you going to hesitate to come and conquer the land which God has given you to possess the land, to settle it, to take it as an inheritance? So we have to do something about this. So appoint 3 people per tribe. Ve'eshlachem v'yakumu, I will send you. V'yakumu v'yitalechu ba'aretz, and you will go and walk the land. V'yichtavu ota l'fi nachalatam, and write it down according to each tribe, according to their portion or inheritance. Write it down. Classic role of what we call in English cartographers. Map it out. Take each tribe, take their territory, map it out, identify the cities, identify the borders, go and map out your territory. V'yavo elai, and then come back here and bring me the report of each tribe in accordance with what you see with your eyes, your division, the names of the cities, where they are, the borders between the tribes. Bring that to me. Divide the land into 7 portions. Why 7? Open parentheses. Yehuda Yamod al Kvulo Negev, because Yehuda already took their portion in the south. Ubeit Yosef Yamdu al Kvulo Tzafon, and Ephraim and Menashe took their portions already in the north of where we are, Ephraim and Menashe. The Atem, you, the remaining 7 tribes, Tichtavu et Aretz Shiva Chalakim. Write down the land into 7 portions, and bring it to me. V'yariti lachem goral po lifnei Hashem Elokeinu. And then I will cast the lots for you here before God, as is required by the Torah. Open parentheses again. Why are there only 7 portions? We constantly come back to this theme. Levi doesn't get a portion. They have cities, we'll see later. Reuven got half of Menashe on the east. And so what remains is the 7 tribes as we have identified. Vayakumu ha'anashim vayalechu. So 7 tribes, 3 people per tribe, that leaves 21 people who are designated to go and map out the land. So they went. Vayakumu ha'anashim vayalechu. Vayitzav Yehoshua taluchim lichtov et haaretz. Yehoshua commanded, instructed these 21 people, and he gave them specific instructions. L'chu v'hitaluchu ba'aretz. Go and walk through the land. V'kitvota, and write it down, describe it. The cities and the fortifications and the fields and the poor and the fertility of land, write it all down. V'shuvu elai, and bring it back to me. U'fo ashlich lechem goral lifnei Hashem b'Shiloh, and here I will cast the lots for you before God in Shiloh, because now the Mishkan's in Shiloh. So these people went, they described all the cities of the 7 portions, and they put it into a book. And they brought it to Yehoshua. So I now have a book that has the list of each tribe and their cities and portions. And so Yehoshua cast lots for them in Shiloh before God. And he so divided the land according to the tribes. And the Goral for Mateh B'nei Binyamin, which is the first tribe in this parak, is between Ephraim and Yehuda, and the rest of this chapter will deal with the description of the portion of Binyamin, and then I'm just going to give a bird's eye view. The next chapter will deal with the second Goral for Shimon, and then the third Goral for Zvulun, Vayala Goral Shlishi Livnei Zvulun, and the fourth Goral for Yisachar Yetza Goral HaRevi'i, and the 5th Goral for Asher, Vayetza Goral HaChamishi L'mateh B'nei Asher, the 6th Goral for Naphtali, Livnei Naphtali Yetza Goral HaShishi, and the 7th Goral for Dan, L'mateh B'nei Dan L'mishpachotam, Yetza Goral HaShvi'i, and then the parak this whole unit comes to a close. They finished distributing the land according to their borders. They gave Yehoshua his portion as well, his portion in Har Ephraim. Elen nachalot asher nachalu Elazar HaKohen v'Yehoshua ben Nun v'Rashei Avot. This is the inheritance, the portions apportioned by Elazar HaKohen, Yehoshua ben Nun, and the heads of the tribes, Rashei Avot. The Matot B'nei Yisrael, Bigoral B'Shiloh Lifnei Hashem, with the Goral in Shiloh before God, Petach Ol Moed, V'Echalu Mechaleket Aretz, and that finished the division of the land. My focus for today is the story of the Goral. And a few people over the course of the last few weeks, I was asked a few times, and forgive me, I just don't remember who asked the question, doesn't matter. It was asked, what's the role of the Goral? What's the uniqueness? How does this Goral work? So that's a subject for today. Essentially brackets the focus of this chapter 18 and 19 and this story of the division of the remaining tribes. So there are essentially three questions we need to address in this last unit on the conquest or division of the land. What is the role of the Goral versus the role of these three people per tribe who were sent to map out the land? That's our first question. What role does Shiloh have in this story, which we'll come back to in another shir? And to what extent were they, or greater or lesser extent, were they successful in this effort? So let's start with the question of the Goral. And there's an obvious question here. There's an obvious glaring tension, if you will, or contradiction even, between two issues. Number one is they're told that this division is going to be by Goral. How many times in this parak does Yehoshua say, I will cast the lots before God, v'yariti lachem Goral po lifnei Hashem Elokeinu. We'll cast the lots here to apportion the land, that the land was apportioned by Goral. So it is described in the Torah over and over again, to apportion the land of Israel by Goral. Each portion is called a Goral. A Goral means a lottery, a arbitrary casting of a lot, or throw of the die, right? A Goral. On the other hand, Yehoshua clearly instructs them to take 3 people per tribe, shlosha anashim lashavet, before the Goral, before these lots. And he sends them out to map out their territory, and to write it all down, and to ascribe the different cities. Right? How did they know where to go? If the portions of land were given by lots, how did these people know where to go? So you could argue, and it's a simple answer, but I don't think it's the correct answer, that all these 21 people, 3 people per tribe, went everywhere. They mapped out all the cities of the land without dividing them by tribes, and then Yehoshua used the lots to divide them by tribes. That would be the sort of, if I read the Midrashim literally, that would be the way I would have to interpret the text. But I'm not sure that's correct, because for that you don't need shlosha anashim lashavet. Why do you need 3 people per tribe? They would write what they wrote in this book was the portion of each tribe. If the division of the Goral is arbitrary, how did they know where to go? And that's the tension. What is a Goral? We think of a Goral in the classic sense of Megillat Esther, for example. I gave you a bunch of sources related to the word Goral, but it's this is basic understanding, right? Haman, who throws the lot to determine what day and what month to destroy the Jewish people, he poured hu hagoral. The pour which he cast was a lottery, a lot. He threw a dice. Which month would come out in favor, right? Which was be written in the stars.
It's the gorilla in the room.
Excuse me?
It's the gorilla in the room.
Okay. We think of a Goral, for example, like the story, and I can put these sources here, but I'm going to jump to them in the websites as well, just because I find it easier to read them there. The Goral, for example, the most famous Goral in all of Tanakh is the Goral which we describe in detail in the Avoda of Yom Kippur, where there were 2 goats, identical in every way. One would be brought as a korban on the Mizbeach, the other would be sent out to the desert to be killed, to be thrown off the hill. One is called Sel Hashem, the other is called Sel Azazel. And the decision which goat would be brought as a korban and which one would go as a Se'il Azazel was determined by a Goral. Goralot, Goral Echad LaHashem, Goral Echad LaAzazel. One Goral, 2 lots, 2 pieces of writing. It would be put into a box. One says La Hashem, the other says La Azazel. And the way we describe it in the Avodah on Yom Kippur is he would place his hands over the korban and he would draw out of the box, the kalfi as it's described, which is where the modern day voting booth kalfi word comes from. And he would draw out arbitrarily one piece of paper that said La Hashem, and that would be the Seir La Hashem, and the other piece of paper that said La Azazel, and that would be La Azazel. And it was totally arbitrary. And that's how we perceive the concept of a goral, as an arbitrary determination, but obviously arbitrary in the sense, in quotation marks, because it has divine power behind it. It's essentially a way of determining God's choice in this matter. God's choice, which seir would go to the Mizbech, which seir would go to Azazel, is determined by the goral. And that's exactly how the division of the land of Israel is described in the Torah numerous times. In Bamidbar Chaf Vav, I'll show it to you here. Bamidbar Chaf Vav, after the census of all the tribes of all of Israel, and Parsha Pinchas, and all the description of the various and the numbers of each tribe and how large they are, etc. These are the tribes to which you will divide the land, in accordance with the number of their families. The larger tribes would get more land, the smaller tribes would get smaller portions, according to their census, according to their nachala. However, says the Torah, but this was to be done by goral. It wasn't simply to say, okay, here's the land, the larger tribes will get this portion, the smaller tribes will get this portion, but this was done by goral, in accordance with the names of the tribes. Al pi ha-goral tichalek nachalato, according to the lot. Because the goral determined God's choice in the matter, as if it spoke on behalf of God. And we'll see that that goral included the role of the Urim v'Tumim, of the breastplate of the Kohen Gadol, so it certainly had the gushpankin, had the approval of the Navi and of the Kohen, and that was the role of Elazar, and that was the role of Yehoshua. What the role of the Nisim here is to be determined. And that's how it was supposed to be divided up. You have another reference for it over and over again in the Torah. This is emphasized. You have another reference for it, for example, in Bamidbar Lamed Gimel, where begins the description of the portion of the boundaries of the land, the mitzvah to conquer the land, to drive out the inhabitants, and to remove the idolatry. Take possession of the land, and settle, dwell therein. והתנחלתם את הארץ בגורל למשפחותיכם, and you will divide the land in accordance with this lot. More larger tribes, smaller land for smaller tribes, אלא שיצא לו שם מהגורל, in accordance with how the evaluation of the goral shall be determined. But everything revolves around this goral. And the next parak as well, in parak Lamed Daled, Zot the parak that describes the boundaries and the borders of the land of Israel. Right? This is we went through this, we learned this parak once before. This is the chapter that describes in detail the entire boundary of the land of Israel. The border, the larger boundaries, meaning not Eretz Canaan, not the sub-tribe boundaries, but the whole land. And after it finishes describing this division, it says, "Vayitzav Moshe b'nei Yisrael lemor, zot ha'aretz asher titnachalu ota begoral asher tzivah Hashem." This is the land that you will divide by goral for 9.5 tribes, because 2.5 tribes already received their portion. And what remains for 9.5 tribes is this division by goral. And for that, you need the Kohen Gadol. For that, you need the Navi, or in this case, the equivalent of Moshe, in this case, Yehoshua. Elazar Kohen v'Yeshua ben Nun. For some reason, and I leave this as an open question for now, in addition to Elazar and Yehoshua, you also need the Nasi of every tribe. The Nasi Echad Nimateh. One Nasi per tribe. in the Torah. Yehoshua changes that to 3 representatives per tribe. Unclear why, other than so that there should be no dispute, right? Not that there should be a kind of a more democratic process. You have 3 people, like a Beis Din, for each tribe rather than 1 Nasi, but nonetheless, the leadership of each tribe participates in this process. And these are the names of the people. Elish, Mota, Nashim, Mata, Yehuda, Kaleb, ben Yefuneh. The head of tribe of Judah was Kaleb ben Yefuneh. Shimon, Shmuel ben Yishadai. It goes through all the names of all of the Nisim in the 2nd generation, and concludes, so the role of the Nisim in this process is somewhat of a question, but it's clear that this was done by Goral. And so I come back to the question with which we started, namely, what role are these cartographers to go out and map out the land, Shlosha Nishim L'Shabbat, before the Goral? If you map out each in accordance with their inheritance, how do they know where to go? Unless you want to argue that they all went everywhere and there was no tribal division until the Goral. That's possible. And again, if I take a face value reading of how Chazal describe it, you could argue that all of these 21 people went everywhere. I'm not sure that's true. My gut says he sent each 3 people per tribe to their tribe, but I leave that as an open question for now. I'll explain to you why I'm so convinced of that in a few minutes. But let's first take a look at how Chazal navigate this question. This is a very famous issue it's a Gemara in Baba Batra, and the Gemara starts with a very interesting, subtle contrast between the phrase Ach bagoral, through the lot shall it be divided, and the phrase Al pi hagoral, by the mouth of the goral. What's a pi hagoral? Pi hagoral is essentially the mouthpiece of Nevuah. What's the mouthpiece of Nevuah in the context of the Tanakh? Is the role of a Navi, or the role of the Urim V'Tumim. Right? The Urim V'Tumim would be the equivalent at the breastplate with a voice of God that would speak to them through the Urim V'Tumim. But the Goral is an arbitrary kalfi, is a lot. You throw a portion into a box and out comes the Salah Hashem or Salah Azazel. So the Gemara starts with the question, was it an arbitrary lot, Goral, or was it a Urim V'Tumim al pi hagoral? And the Gemara's answer is that it was both. Hoketzad, Elazar milubash Urim V'Tumim. Elazar the Kohen Gadol would wear the breastplate. V'Yehoshua v'chol Yisrael amdim lefanav, Yehoshua and all the people are standing before him. V'kalpi shel shvatim, v'kalpi shel tchumin munachim lefanav. And in 2 boxes, he has a box with the names of the tribes, and a box with the names of all of the portions and the cities therein, or the names of all the cities. And mechaven b'ruach hakodesh. And Yehoshua would, or Elazar would be mechaven, he would anticipate in ruach hakodesh and say, meaning through the Urim V'Tumim, Zvulun ole, Tchum Ako oleimo. He would say, for example, the next tribe to receive their portion would be Zvulun, and he will have the city of Akko. That's what they would say through the Urim V'Tumim. But then Taraf Bakalfi Shoshvatim, he would put his hand into the box with the names of the tribes. He would put his hands into the box with the names of the cities, Taraf Bakalfi Shotchumin, and pull up 2 cards. One card would say, oh, Zvulun, and the other card would say, Akko. In other words, whatever he had said through the Urim V'Tumim, that's exactly what the Goral, with the arbitrary pick of the lot out of the box, that would confirm what the Urim V'Tumim said initially. So you had 2 steps. One is the Urim V'Tumim, and the other was an arbitrary pick out of the box, and they confirmed each other. They came up with exactly the same story. And he would do this again. He would say Naphtali, and he would say the city of Ginasar, and so on and so forth. That's how this would go in the whole Shevet V'Shem. So there's an arbitrary lot, and there's the voice of the Yom V'Tum. And to all of that, I would throw in a third equation, or a third element, which is that Yeshua sends cartographers to map out the land. And how did they know where to go? How did they know which portion would be the portion of Binyamin, and which portion would be the portion of Shimon, or which portion would be the portion of Gad, or of, sorry, not Gad, of Dan, or of Naphtali? It hasn't yet been determined. The Goral hasn't happened yet. So you could argue, as I said before, that all 21 went to the entire land of Israel without tribal division, and they wrote down all the cities, and then the Kalfi or the Goral divided them all up. You could make that argument. I'm not convinced. And the reason I'm not convinced is because we have evidence that the direction, guidelines of which tribe would eventually be settled in which part of the territory of the land of Israel was set in place already by Yaakov Avinu and confirmed by Moshe Rabbeinu in their final brachot to the people. And so, before we get to any Goral, we already have a division of the land set by Yaakov. And we have a division of the land set by Moshe. And Moshe changes some of the allocations of Yaakov. I'll show you that in a moment. So that's the third equation. They knew where the portions were going to be. Yaakov set that in place. Yaakov was promised. It was his portion of land. It was his will. It was his bequeathed, his final will and testament. He gives his bracha to his children. He gives them the only possession he had. The only possession Yaakov had was the land of Israel. And so on his deathbed, he literally gives them the land of Israel. I think I just closed the wrong one. Okay, let's go to that's not where I want to be. I want to very sheet tet. Sorry if I made you dizzy there. Vayikra Yaakov el banav vayomer. Yaakov on his deathbed calls over his sons, and he says, come here close, and I will tell you what will be b'acharit hayamim. And this is the first use of the phrase acharit hayamim in Tanakh. I've shared with you in the past what I think is the correct translation of the phrase acharit hayamim. I don't think it means eschatological end of days, end of history. The word achor in Tanakh is the opposite of the word lifnim. Lifanim b'Yisrael means it was in the past, lifanim b'Yisrael. Acharit hayamim means in the future. How far into the future is undetermined. But acharit hayamim means not the end of days, but means the future days, sometime in the future. Here's what I'm giving you. Sometime in the future, you will come back to the land that from which I came, the land of Israel, where you're going to go and bury me, and I'm giving you this land. Hikavtzu v'shimu b'nei Yaakov, shimu Yisrael avichem. And now, if you look at Yaakov's brachos to his children, one of the great mysteries is, what was Yaakov trying to do? What was his goal? So, as you read through the brachos, and I'll just show you a cross section, scattering, sort of sampling, but you'll see right away. Reuven b'choriyata, kochiv roshitoni. Reuven, you're my b'chor, you're my firstborn. But you were rash, you were quick, you mounted on your father's bed, you defiled my couch. End of story. So what did he give Reuven? What's his bracha to Reuven? He scolds him, he chastises him, he gives him musar. That's his final word in bracha to Reuven. And why mention that he's the firstborn? The answer is, I think, that he was saying to Reuven, even though you are my firstborn and therefore my firstborn should receive the double portion, you're not getting the double portion because of X, Y, and Z. You're getting one portion. Who's going to get the double portion? Yosef, whose portion will be allocated to Ephraim and Manasseh. And if you look down at Yosef, I'll come back to the rest of them in a moment. If you look down at Yosef, it's the very end of the parak. Ben Parat Yosef, Ben Parat Ayin, fruitful as Yosef, fruitful like the springs, etc. Fruitful. Why is he to describe Yosef as fruitful? And then he gets very esoteric. I'm not going to get into all the details, but what he does say is, Me'el avicha v'azreka, that Shaddai v'varcheka, from the God of your father may help you, may assist you, Birchot Shemayim me'al, Birchot Tamayim rovetz tachat, the blessings above, the blessings below, Birchot Shaddai v'racham, the blessings of breast and womb, meaning multiply, be large, right, in size, a larger tribe. And already in the previous parak, he said to Yosef, your sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, will be, Reuven v'Shimon, Yuli will be for me like Reuven and Shimon. Shimon, like yeah. You will have two portions instead of one. That's one aspect of the bracha. Who would get the bechor? Yosef would get the bechor instead of Reuven. But we're not done. Take a look at Shimon. Shimon and Levi. Shimon v'Levi achim. Shimon and Levi, partners in crime, weapons of violence, right? The story of Shechem. And therefore, in their council I shall not come, in their assembly I don't want to be. Therefore, I will scatter them, I will divide them. Can't give them one portion of land. You have to divide them. History will prove that it will bear this out. When it came to their portions, Shimon loses their entire nachal. They were supposed to be on the east side of the Yarden. Their entire nachal is taken away from them. They are given 5 cities inside the tribal territory of Judah. Levi redeems themselves in the story of Chet HaEgel, and therefore they're given a special portion, the portion of the Mishkan, but they're not given land. They're given cities scattered throughout the land. Yaakov's bracha to Shimon and Levi, they cannot be given a contiguous territory of Shevet. And so on and so forth. Yehuda, besides leadership, which he gives to Yehuda for various reasons related to the story of Sefer Breshit, he also says to Yehuda, "Osvila gefen iro v'lasareka b'nei atonot kibes beyayin levusho b'dam suto." He will tether his fowl to the vine and wash his garb in wine, grapes his roe, and wash in the redness of grapes his roe. Grapes? Why is he giving Yehuda grapes? Why? Because the area of Yehuda is the area today known as Har Hebron, or Gush Etzion. And what's the most common agricultural item that you see growing everywhere in the area of Gush Etzion? All the vines, all the grapes, all the wine that comes from that area. He tells Yehuda where his fields, where his land will be. Zvulun, L'chof Yamim Yishkon. He will dwell by the coast. He says to you, Zvulun, you're going to be on the coast. And his portion will be all the way up to Tzidon. Yisachar has to be strong and stubborn like a donkey because he's going to be between the sheepfolds, between the borders. He's going to be inside the valley of Emek Yisrael. And inside the valley of Emek Yisrael, you have to hold that territory for reasons we'll see in Sefer Shoftim. Most famous, of course, is Dan. Dan, Rashi, all this is recorded in Rashi. Rashi interprets all of the tribal divisions in accordance with Yaakov's bracha. Yehi Dan and Nachash Ali Derech, Shifon Ali Orach. Dan has to be a serpent, a viper. Why? Hanoshech ikvesus v'yipol rechovo achor, who bites the horse's heels and the rider falls backwards. It's a fact. And even the interpretation here, if I open up the Olam Mikra, you can see that what Yaakov is doing is he's giving a portion of each tribe in the land of Israel. Dan is the only tribe given a coastal region without any hills. And therefore, he has nowhere to escape to when he can't conquer the Canaanite horses and chariots on the coast. And he's left to the methodology of how do you deal with the horses and chariots. If you don't have chariots, you don't have horses, and you're not allowed to have horses, right? If you're, according to the Torah, king can't have too many horses, can't build an army of horses. How do you deal with the tanks of the chariots of the enemy force? So Rashi says he was essentially blessing Dan with the methodology that Shimshon used to reach behind the inside enemy territory and to be like a snake in their midst and to bite the snake can take down the attribute of the snake is that it frightens the horse and the shech ikvesus, and if you frighten the horse you can derail the engine of the tank before it has a chance to attack. But I pray for you because that's a challenge. And so on and so forth. Naphtali all the way up north. Zedo set loose. Yaakov gave his children the land of Israel, and he apportioned each tribe in their territory. When it came to Moshe Rabbeinu in the end of Sefer Devarim, Moshe similarly, Moshe, according to, and there's a whole discussion in the Rishonim, what was the purpose of Moshe's bracha? Well, I'm following the path, the interpretation here of the Chizkuni, which you have on the source page, who interprets exactly this, that when they go into the land of Israel, Moshe's bracha was to them a allocation of the land with certain provisions, certain changes. So, for example, one of the things that the Mefarshim pick up on is that Moshe also goes to all the tribes. Let Reuven live, not die. Let his numbers be few. What does that mean? That's a bracha. He shouldn't die. Says Chizkuni, yes, because by this point in time, Reuven, Gad, and half of Manasseh had agreed that they would go and be the front lines of the army. They would cross over the Jordan and fight with Israel for the land of Israel until the allocation was done. And then 14 years later, they would return to their homes on the east side of the Jordan. So Moshe prayed for them. They should be successful, that they should be able to return the same numbers that go. Yechid Reuven, Ayamot. Similarly, it goes to all the tribes. What's fascinating is that all the Mefarshim point out there's no bracha in V'zot bracha, yet Moshe doesn't give a bracha to Shimon. He leaves out Shimon completely. Why does he leave out Shimon completely? Look at this Chizkuni. It's really fascinating. Uven kamochen lefi she'avar Reuven Rishon, Shimon lo uzkak lazkiro. Shimon was not. It was not necessary to mention Shimon. Lefi shaya ragil lechat im Yehuda, because when Yehuda went to get his portion, he said to the people, we'll see this at the beginning of Shoftim, who wants to come with me? And Shimon went with him. And for that reason, Shimon was given 5 cities inside Shevet Yehuda. The other reason is because Yaakov already said that Shimon has to be divided. Can't be allowed to have a portion. So Shimon doesn't get a bracha. And Binyamin, Ephraim, it goes to all of them. I'll show you one fascinating change that Moshe makes. Take a look at Shevet Dan. Uledan Amar. Dan gur aryeh. Dan is a lion's cub. Is a nek min Bashan that leaps out of the Bashan. What does that mean? The Bashan is the Golan. Har Chamon is Har Bashan. What's the problem? Moshe put Dan, is there a map here? No. Moshe put Dan, Yaakov put Dan on the coast. But Dan was not going to succeed on the coast. And so the story at the end of Sefer Shoftim, the beginning of Sefer Shoftim, really historically, is that Dan migrates, and they migrate all the way up north into the area of Laish, in the area of the Golan. Why do they migrate up north to the Golan? Because Moshe gave them a second portion of land, recognizing that they were going to be unsuccessful potentially of settling in the coast. Moshe gave Dan a portion of the Bashan. And so that's exactly where they go. They go up north to the Bashan, to the area of the Golan. You've all been to Tel Dan, and so on and so forth. The description of the brachot are guidelines as to where the tribes would go, where they would settle. There's no Goral here. There's no Goral telling Dan where they're going to be. Yaakov put Dan on the coast. Moshe put Dan in the Bashan. What Goral? So I come back to the question. What is the role of the Goral? And what is the role of these three representatives to go and write down the portion of the land, Shiva Chalakim? So the answer is that this all converges in one. That's why I'm convinced that they didn't have 21 people going to all the land and writing down every city in an arbitrary list, and then the Goral determined which cities would go to which tribes. The guidelines for where the tribes would divide the land was already set in place by Yaakov on his deathbed and by Moshe Rabbeinu before he left. The only difference was that you needed the list of the cities. You needed the specifics. You needed the boundaries. You needed the borders. Yaakov gave guidelines. Moshe gave guidelines, regions, territories. Didn't give borders, didn't give cities. So now you need to tell each tribe, go and conquer the cities of Hebron, and the cities of Devir, and the cities of Akko, and the city of... You need to go and settle there. You need to go live there. You need a list of each city per tribe. So now he sends these 21 people, 3 per tribe, to go out and, as cartographers and surveyors, to write out what their territory looks like, what cities there are, what boundaries there are. Bring it all to me in Shiloh, and the Goral will either approve or disapprove, support or challenge the division that you have written along the course, length, and breadth of the land. That's one part of it. I want to point out one more observation. He gathers everybody in Shiloh, and he says to them, 3 people per tribe, V'yakumu v'yitalchu ba'aretz. Go and walk the land. Yitchalku ota l'shiva chalakim. Divide it into 7 portions. Yehuda their portion, Yosef their portion. You write the remaining 7 portions. Bring it to me here for a Goral. V'yakumu anashim v'yelechu. The people got up and they went. V'yitzav Yehoshua, and Yehoshua said to them, to the people who were going to write out the land, to survey it, L'chu v'hitalchu ba'aretz. Walk through the land. Does that remind us of any verse in Chumash? When God says to Abraham, kum hitalech ba'aretz, l'orkao l'rachba, go and walk the land, north, south, east, west, because to you and your descendants I will give this land, l'chal zaracha acharech atnena. That's what these representatives had to do. They had to walk through the land, walk through their land, walk through their tribal land, write down the names of the cities, see it, survey it, understand what was involved, figure out the strategy. They had to, how should I put it? Lay claim to it. They had to want it. They had to desire it. They had to say, oh, that's my city of Akko. That's going to be my city of Tzvat. That's going to be my city of Tzidon. That's going to be my city of one by one, city after city, Shalabim, Dan, Eshtal. They had to literally write it out and walk through the land. If this is correct, and I'm fairly convinced that that's essentially the combination of the role of the tribes and their representatives to survey the land, to claim the land that was given to them from the days of Yaakov and Moshe, and then to allow the Goral to empower that decision with the divine gushpanka, if you will, the stamp of the Urim V'Tumim. If that's true, it explains one of the greatest mysteries in Chumash. It enables us to understand, and this was a chiddush that Rav Yaakov Meidan actually writes up in one of his articles in Mekadim, one of his early articles on the story of the spies, a famous piece to review, to resolve one of the great mysteries in Chumash. And that is the contradictions between the story of the spies as they appear in Parshat Shlach and the story of the spies as they appear in the beginning of Parshat Devar. So allow me for a moment to digress for a second. Let's go to Bamidbar Yud Gimel. Say allow me. You don't have a choice. I control the microphone. All right. Bamidbar Yud Gimel, Parshat Shlach. They just left Sinai, beginning of Sefer Bamidbar. God says to Moshe, Shlach lecha anashim v'yatudu et eretz Canaan, go send men. And I do not like this translation. Go send men v'yatudu et eretz Canaan. What does v'yatudu mean? It doesn't mean to be tourists. V'yatudu means latur, to see. Latur v'lo taturu achrei levavchem. You should not lust after your eyes. To see, to view, to look. V'yatudu et eretz Canaan. Send one person per tribe. Kol nasi b'hem, the Nisim of the tribes. By God's command, Moshe sends them, Kolam Anashim, men of stature, Rashi b'nei Yisrael, the heads of the tribes, and these are their names. Goes to all the names of the tribes. Moshe ben Nun, changed to Yehoshua. Moshe sends them to see the land. Again, I don't like this translation. The Ragel, to spy is the Ragel. It doesn't say that, it says Latur. We'll talk about that in a second. And Moshe gives some instructions, and he says, Aluza b'Negev, go up from the south. Uri temetaretz, and go look at the land, and see it. And go look at the people. Are they strong, are they weak, are they many, are they few? And the land, is it good land? Is it fertile land? Is it not fertile land? What are the cities? Are they fortified cities? Are they not fortified cities? What about the land? Is the land is the land fertile, fat, or is it lean? Does it have trees? Not. Bring back fruits of the land. They go up to Aretz, they go from the south, and they go 40 days all the way up north, all the way down south, and the rest of the story, as they say, is history. And there are immediate questions that are asked. Why, if they're going on a spy mission, why do they need the spy mission if it's destined to, Rashi says it was destined to failure, which is why Moshe prayed on behalf of Yehoshua. But on the other hand, if it was destined to fail, so why does God agree to it? Why does God initiate it? God commands Moshe, send people, shlach lecha anashim. Rashi says something astounding here. Rashi says the word shlach lecha means I'm giving you the option. You choose. If you want, you can send. If you don't want, you don't have to send. And the Ramban and others all challenge Rashi and say that can't be. Because the same phrase, shlach lecha, is used for the mitzvah like lech. God says to Abraham, lech lecha le'eretz ashereka, or lech lecha le'eretz ha-moriah. The mitzvah, the mandate of the Akedah was not optional. The mandate of lech lecha was not optional. Lecha is not optional. It's an expression that emphasizes the mandate. Shlach, or send, says shlach lecha anashim. On top of that, if you look at the beginning of Devarim, Moshe describes to the next generation, albeit, the story of the spies, but he describes it differently. He says, "Vatikruvun alai kulchem, you all approached me. Vatomru, and you said to me, Nishlacha anashim lefanenu v'yachberu lanu et haaretz. We want to send people that will spy out the land for us. And they will tell us, the road that we will take. and the cities that we will approach. And I agreed. I thought that was a good idea. So I took 12 men, one per tribe, and you went up from the south, and you went to Nachal Eshkol, and you spied it out, and you took of the fruit of the land, and then you went north, right? Then we know the rest of the story, and you came back, and you reported, and you refused to go, and you rebelled. And the Ramban, all the Rishonim, ask the obvious questions. First of all, in Dvarim it says it was the people's idea, and in Mishmos it says it was God's idea. In Dvarim it says that Moshe agrees to the people. In Dvarim it says that God tells him who to send. In Dvarim it says that it was Moshe's idea to send 12, and in Bamidbar, God picked the 12 to go. Just on and on and on. And the most dramatic contradiction is after the people rebelled, and after God decrees that they will not go into the land, in Dvarim it says, Vayishma Hashem kol divrechem, Vayiktzov, God was angry, and he took an oath, and he says, this generation will not see the land, with the exception of Kalev and Yehoshua. And gam bihit anaf Hashem biglalchem lemor, lo gam ata lo tavo. God was angry at me too. And God said, I will not enter the land. Yehoshua will come instead. God was angry at Moshe for the story of the hitting of the rock. That's 40 years later. 38 years later. This passage says that God told Moshe he was to blame for Chet HaMeraglim. So how do we resolve this? So, to make a long story very short, because we have 2 minutes left, Rabbi Dan's thesis is there were 2 missions, and they were not the same mission. There was the mission God set in place in Parshat Shlach, and there was the mission the people asked for. And Moshe, on his own, combined them and doomed them both to failure. And so Moshe was to blame for the sin of the spies. The mission that people wanted is self-explanatory. They wanted to know how to conquer the land, to send spies to the first city. Like we looked at this once when we studied the story of the spies that Yehoshua sends. When you send spies, you send 2 spies, you send a small delegation, you send them to one city, you send them for a short period of time, and you get them back home quickly. Yehoshua sends 2 spies, he sends them to one city called Yericho, and he gets them home quickly. That's what the people wanted. God's mission was different. God doesn't send them on a spy mission. He sends them on a cartography mission. He sends them on exactly the same mission that 40 years later, in this case 54 years later, Yehoshua sends the last 7 tribes on, which is to send the people to go tribe by tribe, territory to territory, v'yaturu et Eretz Canaan, and write it out. Survey the land, divide the land by tribes, which is why you need the heads of the tribes, the Nesiim, why you needed tribe by tribe. This was God's mission. This is what God wanted them to do, to go and to claim the land, Kumi talech ba'aretz, l'orkah l'rochba, north and south, and to essentially divide the land by tribe. Moshe, and there's hints of it already in Bamidbar, Moshe, when he gives them the questions to answer, combines the 2 missions together. He says, go and look at the land.
Vayaturu, it's like tayarim. It's
Correct.
not meraglim.
Correct. That's what I said. That's exactly the point. This mission in Bamidbar, Parshat Shlach, this mission was about God's request to go and survey the land and divide it by tribe, which is why you needed 1 per tribe. You needed the Nasi of every tribe. You needed a 40-day mission to go north and south. This was not a spy mission. But there is in the background in Devarim Perek Aleph a record of this spy mission that the people requested. So Moshe combines them. And he says to them, "Uritem et haaretz, take a look at the land. Is it, and take a look at the people. Uritem et haaretz ve'et ha'am." The spy mission needed to know the people. The survey needed to know the land. These were two different missions. And he says, are the people strong and the people weak? That's a spy mission. The land, is it good? Is it fertile? How do you divide the land? That's a surveying mission. And on, he mixes the two together. And so in the end, the 12 spies, who were 12 Nesiim, who went north and south, they failed in the spy mission. They failed in the surveying mission also. And so in the end, Moshe is to blame for the combination of the two missions that essentially failed. And so 40 years later, that's exactly what Yehoshua does. Yehoshua splits them. Yehoshua correctly, when he enters into the land by Yericho, he sent two people on a spy mission, because that's a spy mission. That's to figure out how to conquer Yericho. That's part one. Now, 14 years later, after the national conquest of the land, now you're taking each tribe and sending them to their territory. Now he says to the people, take 3 people per tribe, and kum hitalech ba'aretz. Latur et haaretz. Go and tour the land. Go and survey the land. Go and write down the cities. Go and ascribe each tribe to their territory along the lines that Moshe Rabbeinu gave, along the lines that Yaakov Avinu gave us. And then you come back to Shiloh, and then you establish a goral, and you finalize it with God's approval to a plan that was in place in the days of Yaakov Avinu around his deathbed. That's the story of the goral. So on the one hand, it's the mandate of the people to fall in love with the land, to ascribe each city to their territory, like the story of the spy mission that was supposed to be Parshat Shlach, which wasn't a spy mission at all. It was a Vayaturu, it was a Kum Hitalech ba'aretz. That was the mission that Yehoshua now gave to the 7 remaining tribes. And then to come back to Shiloh and to give it the divine stamp of approval with the goral. Okay, I'm going to stop here, because it's 9 o'clock, and I've been talking for an hour, so that's good for me to stop. And I will take questions if there are.
Yeah, Rabbi, I have a question about Shevet Dan. So
Yeah.
where did he end up? I mean, Yaakov gave him the coast. Moshe gave him the north. Did he have 2 territories?
Yes. And the answer to where he ends up is an answer you'll have to wait for Sefer Shoftim to figure out. Because that's the story of the migration of Dan from the coast up north. He ends up with a portion of the tribe on the coast, and a portion of the tribe migrate north. In the story of Pesel Micha, if anybody's familiar with it, migrate north into the area of the Bashan, but they had where to go because Moshe gave them a second portion.
And so some stayed on the coast also.
Yes. Yeah. Shimshon is on the coast. Shimshon is from Shevet Dan.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi. Excellent.
My pleasure.
See you soon.
Have a good day.
You too. Thank you all. And Bezrat Hashem, next week we will talk about Shiloh.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Good night.
How am I going to fix my name here? I don't know. It's not Dano, it's Danto.
Yeah.
And it's missing T, and I don't know how to fix it.
So the answer is you can fix it temporarily for a particular Zoom session, but to fix it permanently, you have to go into your Zoom account. Do you know how to do that?
I don't know how to do it.
Um,
Maybe I have to speak to Jay Kelman.
yeah, it's you have to do it at your end. Nobody can do it for you.
I don't know.
Let's see if I can do it here.
suddenly in the last 2 weeks, it's this only in a Torah in motion, not in any other things.
I can fix it temporarily, but you can only.
Please do it for me.
So I can fix it temporarily, but to do it permanently, you have to go into your Zoom account.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, but I'll try to remember to do it for you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Rabbi,
Yes.
Rabbi, I had two comments there in the chat, but one is a question. Why was the word Shaddai used to connote God? In one of the sentences there that you cited about halfway through your shiur.
In by Yaakov or by Moshe?
I think it's by Yaakov.
Yeah, by Yaakov would make more sense. Right.
Just why?
Yeah, I don't see a problem there. The notion El Shaddai is a name of God used in Sefer Bereshit quite often, with the Avot as well, certainly with Yaakov. We find it several places in Chumash. So that was one of the ways in which the Avot referred to God as Kel Shaddai. And so in that particular moment, I can show you. I can show you, interestingly, in this pasuk, Yaakov uses the word Shaddai to refer to God. Me'el avicha v'yazdecha ve'et Shaddai v'yivarachecha v'lechot shamayim me'al v'lechot tahom v'vetzet tachat v'lechot Shaddai v'racham. He says, God of your father may help you. Shin Daled Yud is a name for God also. Why he uses
I realize he has, there are different appellations, different names, but why
right?
use that one in that place?
So I have an answer, but not a good answer. Because poetry is very complex and nuanced. And I think there's an element of what we've referred to in poetic languages, in commentary, in exegesis, is lashon lafela lashon, an alliteration. The bracha that Yaakov gives Yosef is bekot shadayim baracha, the blessing of breast and womb.
Uh-huh.
So there's a little bit of an alliteration there. Kel avicha v'yazreka, v'tshadai v'varcheka, v'chot shadayim
That makes
v'varcheka.
sense. That makes sense.
Maybe.
No,
I don't think that's a particularly satisfying answer, but that's what I just kind of jumps off the page that way.
It makes sense, that explanation.
Yeah.
And just a comment, I've always preferred the term to scout rather than to spy or to see. Because scouting is a sort of active seeing, and it has various elements, but not necessarily just to spy.
You could use the word scout for viaturu. Leragel again, the word in Parshat Shlach is only viaturu. You'll never find the word leragel.
Right.
And to scout could be a surveying mission, so that would work.
That's right.
That would work. But we call it the sin of the spies. We don't call it the sin of the scouts.
Right.
Because we conflate the story in Parshat Shlach with the story in Parshat Dvarim. And they're different stories. So what Rav Medan suggests is that they're in fact two different missions.
Right. Exactly right, which is why I'm making that point. Okay. Right. Thank you very much. It was wonderful.
No problem. No problem. My pleasure. Have a wonderful week, everybody. I'm going to sign off here.